All right, ready to dive into what makes those truly legendary companies tick?
I'm game.
You know, the ones that don't just have a good year or two, but just keep crushing it year after year.
Right, they seem to just defy gravity.
Exactly. So we're talking about what separates the merely good companies from the truly great ones. And to guide us, we've got Jim Collins and his book, Good to Great. Did you get a chance to dig into it?
Absolutely, it's a classic. And what makes it so compelling is that it's not based on, just intuition or the latest business fads.
Right, it's not just someone's opinion.
Exactly. Collins went deep, analyzed decades of data from companies that actually made that jump to greatness.
He was looking for those patterns, right? The things that actually move the needle.
Yeah, and it's all about leadership, culture, decision-making, those timeless elements.
And get this, the first thing that kind of blew me away was this idea that good is the enemy of great.
It's so counterintuitive, right?
It totally is, because, when things are going well, you just want to ride that wave,
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. But Collins found that more often than not, that's how companies plateau.
It's that complacency trap. You get comfortable, stop pushing, and that's the death knell for real, enduring greatness.
And the companies that break through?
They never settle.
So even when things are good, they're thinking, okay, how do we get even better?
Exactly. Constantly pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo.
And sometimes that means making really bold moves. Like, think about Kimberly-Clark. They were known for their paper mills, a solid, respectable business.
Sure, everyone knows them.
But their CEO, Darwin Smith, he had this vision for something bigger. So he made this, some might even call it crazy decision. He sold the paper mills.
Wow, talk about a bold move.
Right. Who does that? Sells off what seems like their core business.
Well, Smith, he understood that to be truly great, sometimes you have to let go of what's comfortable, even if it seems counterintuitive. And he faced a ton of backlash for it, by the way.
Oh, I bet.
The media was brutal. Wall Street hammered their stock.
But he held firm.
He had this unwavering conviction, this belief that Kimberly-Clark was destined for bigger and better things.
It's like he had this internal compass guiding him toward a future that no one else could see yet.
Exactly. He was playing the long game, and it paid off big time. Years later, Kimberly-Clark wasn't just surviving. They were absolutely thriving, going head-to-head with the giants in their industry.
It's incredible. Talk about a lesson in trusting your gut and having the courage to make those tough calls, even when everyone else thinks you're crazy.
And it brings us to another hallmark of these great companies, what Collins calls level 5 leadership.
Oh, okay. So when I hear level 5 leadership, I'm thinking, charisma, those big, bold personalities.
It's funny you say that because it's actually the opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, what's fascinating about level 5 leaders is that they're often the quiet ones, the ones who don't need the spotlight.
Humility, then. That's not something you usually associate with powerful CEOs.
Right. But it's not about being a pushover. It's about being completely dedicated to the company's success, even if it means putting their own ego aside. They're ambitious, but their ambition is directed outward toward the company's goals.
So it's about building something that lasts, that's bigger than just one person.
Exactly. And to do that, they surround themselves with people who will challenge them, who make them better.
They're not afraid to admit they don't have all the answers. They're always learning, always growing. Okay, so we've got these humble but incredibly determined leaders. They're willing to make the tough calls. But what happens when things inevitably get tough? Because, let's face it, no company sails through without hitting some rough waters at some point.
You're right, and that's where another crucial insight comes in, the Stockdale paradox.
All right, another paradox. I'm starting to sense a theme here. Hit me with it.
So, it's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And what Stockdale noticed during his time as a POW was really interesting. He observed that the prisoners who were overly optimistic, the ones who kept saying, we'll be out by Christmas, even as Christmas came and went year after year, those were often the ones who didn't make it.
It's that false hope, that denial of reality.
Exactly. The ones who survived, the ones who made it out, were the ones who acknowledged the brutal reality of their situation, the harsh facts, but at the same time maintained an unwavering faith that they would eventually prevail.
So it's about facing the brutal facts, but not letting them crush your spirit, your hope. That's powerful.
Right. And that's what the good to great companies did. They didn't shy away from uncomfortable truths, didn't try to sweep problems under the rug. They leaned in, actively sought them out, because they understood that confronting challenges head-on was the only way to overcome them.
And that takes a lot of courage, honestly, because it's tempting, especially when things are going well, to ignore those little warning signs, those things that make you uncomfortable.
It's much easier to just focus on the positive, right? But the good to great leaders, they understood that true strength comes from confronting your weaknesses, from acknowledging where you need to improve. And it starts at the top. They set the tone, create a culture where people feel safe speaking up, even when it's bad news.
Where dissent is valued, not punished.
Precisely. They don't shoot the messenger, which is so important. I mean, think about Winston Churchill during World War II. He had this separate statistical office created, totally independent from the military, just so he could get completely unfiltered data about how the war effort was actually going.
He knew that sugarcoating the situation wouldn't help anyone. He needed the truth, even if it was hard to hear.
Exactly. And that's what allowed him to make those critical decisions, to adapt and adjust their strategy as needed. That willingness to confront reality, even when it's uncomfortable, it's essential for growth, for survival, for ultimately emerging stronger.
So we've got these amazing leaders who aren't afraid of the truth. They've built a culture where people feel safe speaking up. But then what? How do they figure out where to focus all that energy and courage?
That's where the Hedgehog Concept comes in.
Okay, I'll admit, I always thought this one was more complicated than it probably is.
Oh, it's actually quite simple, but deceptively powerful.
All right, I'm all ears.
So picture a hedgehog, right? It's not trying to be a lion or an eagle.
Or anything else.
Exactly. It knows it's got one main thing, those spines, and that's its defense. The Hedgehog Concept is about companies understanding what they can be the best in the world at. Not just good at, not just pretty good, but the absolute best.
So it's about finding your sweet spot, the thing that you can truly own.
Yes. And having the discipline to stay focused on that, even when other opportunities come along. The book uses Walgreens as an example.
Okay, I'm listening.
They could have gone into any number of businesses, but they realized that they could be the absolute best at convenient drugstores. And that became their hedgehog. Everything they did, all their decisions revolved around that.
So clustering their stores for maximum convenience, the drive-thrus?
Exactly, all those things. And they were incredibly disciplined about staying laser focused on that hedgehog concept.
They passed on a ton of opportunities that might have seemed tempting at the time, but didn't fit within that core focus.
Because they weren't going to get distracted. They understood their genius zone and stuck with it.
So you've got your hedgehog, you know what you're best at, but then how do you actually make it happen? That's where the discipline comes in, right?
Discipline is essential.
Yeah.
But it's not about being rigid or bureaucratic.
Right. It's not about rules for rules' sake.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture, a framework that allows people to do their absolute best work.
They talk about Abbott Laboratories, right? Known for being incredibly financially disciplined, keeping their costs really low.
And that's important, but it wasn't about penny pinching for the sake of it. It was about freeing up resources.
So they could invest in innovation and empower their people to do their most creative work.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Those disciplined companies, they figure out how to create a structure that actually fuels freedom and creativity.
It's like you got the sheet music, the basic melody, but then the musicians are free to, riff and improvise within that structure.
That's such a great analogy. And it highlights how important it is to get the right people on the bus, to use another one of Colin's phrases.
The people who thrive in that kind of environment.
Absolutely. People who are self-motivated, disciplined, and bought into the company's hedgehog concept. You don't have to micromanage them. You can give them the freedom to create magic.
Because they know where they fit in, and they're all rowing in the same direction. It's powerful.
It really is. It's not about top-down control. It's about creating a culture of trust and empowerment.
A shared understanding. This is really resonating with me. Okay, so far we've got the right leadership. We're facing reality head on. We've found our focus, built a culture of discipline. What's next?
Well, let's talk about something that's on everyone's mind these days. Technology. It's everywhere, changing how we do just about everything. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to think it's the magic bullet for success, right?
Absolutely. In this day and age, you've got to have the latest tech, the best software, all of that.
But here's the thing that a lot of people miss, and Collins nails it in the book. Technology, on its own, doesn't create greatness.
Really? Okay, so then how do we make sense of all the hype?
Think of it like this. Technology is an accelerator, not a creator of greatness.
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it.
It's most powerful when it amplifies an existing momentum, not when it's the starting point itself.
So you can't just like slap a fancy app onto a poorly run business and expect miracles.
Exactly. You've got to have that solid foundation first.
That's got to start somewhere else.
Exactly. And the companies in the book, the good, great companies, they didn't just jump on every tech bandwagon that came along. They were very strategic about it.
They waited for the right time.
Yeah, they waited until they really understood how a specific technology could support their hedgehog concept. You know, how it could help them become even better at what they were already great at.
Right, so it's about finding the right technology for the job, not just chasing the latest shiny object.
100%. It's about being intentional. Make the technology work for you, not the other way around. And it reminds me of something I read about Walgreens. They were way ahead of the curve in connecting their stores and using customer data.
Oh, right, and that was way before big data became a thing.
Exactly. But they saw how technology could enhance their convenience strategy, their hedgehog. Long before e-commerce became mainstream, Walgreens was already laying the groundwork, building that infrastructure.
It's like they could see the future.
In a way, they could. They were thinking long-term, and it paid off big time.
So strategic technology, that makes sense. But even with all of this, the right leadership, that willingness to face reality, finding your focus, building that culture of discipline, using tech strategically, is there a moment, a turning point, when a company goes from good to undeniably great? Or is it more gradual than that?
That's where the flywheel effect comes in.
All right, break that down for me.
It's one of the most powerful ideas in the book, this idea of the flywheel effect.
Yeah.
Because it explains why so many people misunderstand how greatness actually happens.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine a giant flywheel, the kind you see in old factories, you know.
Yeah, those big, heavy things.
Exactly. It takes a ton of effort to get it moving initially.
Right, you're pushing and pushing.
And each push, each turn of the wheel, it's small, incremental, but you keep at it. You maintain that consistent effort in a single direction. And slowly but surely, that flywheel starts to gain momentum.
And then at a certain point,
It's almost like magic, right?
it's like it's spinning on its own.
Exactly. It seems effortless. And that's what happens with those good to great companies. There's no single defining moment, no magic bullet, just that relentless, disciplined application of all those fundamental principles we've been talking about.
It's not about one big thing. It's about a lot of little things done consistently over time.
Yes. And here's what's really interesting. Those breakthrough moments, the ones where a company seems to just take off out of nowhere.
Yeah.
A lot of times those moments only become obvious in retrospect, you know?
So the people inside the company, they don't even realize it's happening.
They might not, because they're so heads down, focused on making that next turn of the flywheel. They're doing the work day after day. But from the outside, at a certain point, it becomes clear. They've hit this incredible momentum.
I love that. So it's not about looking for shortcuts or waiting for that one big break. It's about putting in the work day in and day out.
And building that momentum over time, because that's what creates those seemingly overnight successes.
I love this idea. It's inspiring and a little bit daunting at the same time. So we've got to build that flywheel, but then we also have to make sure it keeps spinning.
Well, that's where purpose comes in.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to just want to be great, right?
There's got to be something more.
You need a deeper reason, a why, that fuels that relentless pursuit of excellence.
Oh, so we left off talking about purpose, that deeper why that fuels those exceptional companies. It's not just about, the bottom line.
Right. It's got to be about more than that.
There's this deeper level of meaning, both within the company and out in the world.
And you know what's interesting? This sense of purpose, that core ideology, it can actually make a company more resilient when the inevitable challenges come up, when things get tough.
That's what keeps them grounded.
Yes. It gives them that strength to weather the storm. It reminds me, we talk a lot about strategy and products and all of that.
Tangible stuff.
Right. But one of the most important things, and I think it's often overlooked, is culture.
Oh, culture is huge. But it can be kind of hard to, put your finger on it. It's a bit nebulous, yeah. So how do you actually create a culture that supports that kind of, that lasting greatness?
It goes back to one of Colin's key points, getting the right people on the bus.
Right.
And this is something, those good to great companies, they were really, really disciplined about this. It wasn't just about skills, although obviously that matters.
You've got to have the right people with the right skills, yeah.
Of course. But they were looking for something more. People who were a cultural fit. People who really bought into the company's core values, aligned with the Hedgehog Concept.
It's like that idea, hire for attitude, train for skill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you can teach someone how to do a specific job, but you can't teach them how to be the right fit,
To mesh with the company's DNA. And it's amazing, these companies, they were willing to let go of people who were really talented.
If they weren't the right fit.
Yeah, if they weren't the right fit, they weren't afraid to make that tough call.
Because they knew, in the long run, it would hurt the culture.
Wow. That takes courage.
It does. But it's about protecting that sense of purpose, that shared vision.
And it creates a much stronger company in the long run.
Without a doubt. And it's not just about who you hire. It's also about how you empower those people, to do their best work.
Give them the freedom to, spread their wings a little bit.
Yes. But within that framework of discipline and accountability.
Yeah,
that balance
is so important.
Absolutely. And they give a great example. Nucor, the steel company, they had this amazing culture of open debate.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. They encouraged everyone at every level to share their ideas, challenge each other.
Even the CEO.
Which is incredible. You don't see that very often.
No, you don't. And those debates, they weren't just for show.
They really took them seriously.
Oh, yeah. Decisions were made based on the strength of the arguments, not on who had the most seniority or the loudest voice.
They created this culture of intellectual humility where everyone was open to being wrong,
Yes. And open to learning from each other, which is so powerful.
And I bet that was a huge driver of innovation.
Oh, absolutely. Because when people feel safe speaking their minds, that's when the magic happens. You get those new ideas, those creative solutions.
It makes you think about those values and how important it is to find a company or even just projects to work on.
That are aligned with what you believe in, yeah.
Because when that happens, it's amazing what you can achieve.
Absolutely. And it works both ways, too. When companies are really clear about their values and they actually live them.
They walk to the walk.
Exactly. They attract the right people who resonate with those values, who are naturally drawn to that kind of environment.
It's like this self-reinforcing cycle. You get the right people, and those people make the company even better.
That's a great way to put it. It's this beautiful thing to see in action. And that's how you build companies that don't just have a good year or two. They achieve that lasting greatness.
This whole deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like we've really uncovered something special here, those timeless principles.
That can make all the difference.
It's not about magic formulas or shortcuts. It's about those fundamental truths, about leadership, about culture, about discipline, purpose.
The things that really matter.
And the really exciting thing is, this isn't just for companies, it's for anyone, right?
100%. Anyone who wants to achieve something great with their life, with their work. Find your own Hedgehog Concept. Build that flywheel of momentum. Stay true to your values.
Even when it's tough. And remember, it's a journey. It's not about reaching some finish line and then you're done.
It's about constantly pushing yourself, challenging yourself to be better today than you were yesterday. So to you, our listener, we leave you with this. What will you choose to be great at?
What flywheel will you start turning today? We can't wait to see what you achieve.